Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great and following the 3 H's of the channel. And in this video, it's all about Ohio. So, if that sounds like something you're interested in, pull up a stump and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. In 2016, I graduated high school. That same month, me and 3 of my buddies wanted to go survive in the woods for a week. I'll call them by their names, Jacob, Peter, and Eric. I was the only one who had even a little survivalist knowledge, so I figured that I would teach them a few things. I was a Boy Scout. I come from a military family who taught me how to shoot and camp, that kind of stuff. And we all had military surplus stuff as well, and I brought 3 of my guns. Jacob brought his AR with him. Now if you're wondering the guns that I had an AR-15, that was my very first rifle. I had a Mossberg 590 and an FN FAL that I had bought just a month before this, and I had been saving for it since I was about 16. Jacob and I are the only guys with any firearm experience, so we taught Peter and Eric what to do. Now, we're from Toledo, but we're camping on some family land in Southeastern Ohio. There's bobcats, black bears, boars, probably Bigfoot, skinwalkers, and meth labs. You name it, it's out there in the woods. Appalachia is an absolutely beautiful place, despite the poverty. We take 2 vehicles, my Ford Ranger and my buddy's Jeep Wrangler. We all have our own individual kits, sleeping bags, canteen, clothes, surplus, half-shelter pup tents, and we're all wearing earth tone colors. It's literally going to be us, just LARPing in the woods for 2 weeks, pretending to be super cool survival guys, hunting whatever we can for food. And if we didn't get anything, we'd eat canned stuff and MREs that we brought. So once we got down there, we threw our reserve supplies into this cabin. The cabin could hold like 8 people if needed, but we wanted to get deeper into the wilderness. We dropped off the extra food and medical stuff in case we couldn't get food in the woods or somebody got hurt pretty bad. We taught Eric and Peter how to operate and shoot their guns right there. They loved it. It was their first time. So we packed our kits, what we needed, load our guns, and begin our march into the unknown. And if you're the type of person who is curious about a rundown of what I had on me and what I carried, it might give you a better visual of how things were. On my person were hiking boots, flecked iron pants, my trusty sleeveless Megadeth shirt, an Alice Web gear with 4 mags for my rifle, 2 canteens, an ass pack with a homemade MRE, an extra beanie, a small first aid kit, my compass and stuff like that, my FAL with a 20-round mag in it, in total about 100 rounds. And in my rucksack I had an extra set of clothes, a few pairs of socks, another pair of green pants, a sleeping bag, my tent, 2 more MREs, 1 more canteen, a small hand crank radio, spare batteries for stuff, an Esbit stove and fuel, waterproof matches, iodine tabs. You get the point of what I'm saying. I thought I was completely prepared, and a road flare. So now that you understand how absolutely dumb we look, let's speed it up a bit. We set up camp by this creek, and I show them how to make stream water safe to drink. We eat some MREs the first night. I'll take them hunting and set up snares for tomorrow. I talk about basic survival skills. I show them how to set up a snare for rabbits or squirrels. We shoot the shit and we hang out for a few hours until dark. After that, we break out a bottle of whiskey, and we all take a couple shots before we go to sleep. We take turns on fire watch. Every 2 hours we switched until the sun came up. Continuously, we're hearing coyotes howling through the night. Nothing unusual for us. We grew up in a more rural area outside of Toledo, so nature isn't foreign to us. The next morning, I wake up around sunrise. After I get myself sorted out, I talk to the guys. Peter and Jacob are going to make some coffee on the fire and watch the camp. Eric and I decided to go out and set up snares and explore the landscape a bit. I had been here a couple times as a kid, but we always stuck to the cabin. I don't remember much apart from that, so everything was basically new to me as well. After about an hour of setting up snares and walking, Eric says to me, did you see anything weird last night? And I say, no, why? What did you see, bro? He said, I don't know. I just thought I saw figures moving around the camp a bit. I tell him that it was probably just a deer or something. Don't worry about it. Eric wasn't raised in our town. He moved there with his family freshman year from Philadelphia. We figured he was just out of his comfort zone at first. We didn't think a whole lot much else of it. So we got back to our camp to enjoy some coffee. Eric and Jacob decide to head out to see if they can bag a boar or something to eat. And later that night, the guys come back with a deer on the first night. It was a small deer, but a deer. Jacob was the best shot and hunted the most. If anyone was going to get something, it was probably going to be him. Eric is carrying a couple rabbits that got caught in our snares from earlier. We decide to cook up the rabbits for dinner. We skinned the deer and left her hanging overnight. We hung her high enough in a big-ass oak tree so that predators couldn't get to it. We enjoyed our roasted rabbit, braked out the whiskey again, and decided to hang around the fire, bullshitting for the night. It's around 1 a.m. now. The fire's getting low. Eric and Peter are asleep in their tent. Me and Jacob are sitting by the fire, talking and just passing the whiskey. Then he says, "Did Eric tell you what he saw last night?" I said, "Yeah, but it's probably nothing. He's just seeing things." He seemed pretty spooked about it though, like he really did see something. And then I said I doubt it, he's probably just nervous. It'll end in a couple days, trust me. About a half hour later, we're still talking by the fire. We heard rustling nearby in the darkness. We thought it was a coyote, so naturally I did what anybody in their right mind would do to scare off a dog. I yelled out for it to F off, and then there was nothing. No growling, no rustling, no movement, nothing. Jacob and I raised our guns in the direction that the noise came from. Eric and Peter are both getting up and grabbing their guns, having no idea what's going on. I fire a shot off into the woods to see if I can scare it off, and then I hear a noise that sounded like a wolf and a bobcat together. It was the strangest growl or shriek that I've ever heard. It sounds like something from a Cannibal Corpse song, especially where he screams, "Suffer," and the song "Make Them Suffer." Now, take that scream and warp it, and you kind of get what I'm talking about. It was beyond screwed up. All of us get in a diamond formation around the fire, facing different directions, so we cover the whole perimeter. We stay like this all night. The air smells like wet dog. We hear low grunts around our camp all night, sometimes a growl, like it's circling us or checking us out, but we can't actually see anything. It was a cloudy night, and the moon was absolutely gone behind the cover of clouds. An hour goes by. We hear a sudden rustling from where the deer is hung. The rustling is followed by a loud thud and a dragging sound. After about 5 minutes, the smell dissipates. There's no more growling, shrieking, or grunting. It's as silent as the woods could ever be. We stayed in our formation all night. Nobody spoke, nobody yawned, nobody moved. We sat in total silence until the sun came up. When it did, we went over to investigate our doe. It was gone. There was a trail of blood left behind, making a path to follow to find wherever this animal took it. I think to myself, that thing was hung 8 feet off the damn ground. How the hell did a coyote get it down? The oak tree we hung it on has extremely large gashes at the base, which definitely were not there before. It looked like some kind of velociraptor smoked crack and went apeshit on it. And then we looked up the tree. There were more gashes and marks going up it. Something climbed the tree and cut the rope holding the doe. I looked at Jacob. He looked at me. Without saying a word, we knew that something was seriously wrong, and something strange was going on. Eric and Peter looked confused and scared. We all were, but they looked like it the most. We pack up our camp and head back to the cabin. We'll have to figure out what to do from there. The hike back was hell. We had no sleep. Me and Jacob were slightly hungover, and we hadn't even eaten breakfast. There was no cell reception, and none of our phones were charged. We make the hour hike back to the cabin, drop off our gear, and get rest. I start up my truck to charge our phones. Luckily, we get some service at the cabin. I call up my older brother, Michael. Michael lives with two of our older cousins, Braden and William. Michael was about 5 years older than me, and he had just retired from the Marine Corps the previous year. He was deployed to Afghanistan twice and had combat experience. I call him, and he asks how the trip is going. I say, Mike, I need you, Braden, and William here, right now. Bring camping shit, guns, and ammo. He says, we can't just come down on short notice. It seems fun and all, but... And then I cut him off, and I explain what we had experienced in the last 48 hours. He says, we'll be down in 6 to 8 hours. Don't move. I call my girlfriend and tell her what happened, and that we'll be coming back early. I charge up our phones. I sit in the truck for a bit and try to clear my head, but I keep seeing things out of the corner of my eyes. I don't know if my brain was playing tricks on me or if it was the exhaustion, but that's what I told myself. Eventually, I head back inside with our phones, and I explain what's going on. After explaining everything to the guys, I have to set some new guidelines for the cabin. There's 2 people to be awake at all times. We're taking 4-hour shifts. No drinking, no getting high. All weapons are to be loaded with the safety kept on. We parked our cars in front of the cabin door, almost blocking anything from getting in. We kept guard until Michael, Braden, and William arrived. Once they got all settled in, dropped off their stuff, we filled them in on the details. I'm a huge dumbass, but a curious one too. I really wanted to know what it was that we had encountered. I made the decision that I was going to head back into the woods to go find where this doe went. I asked for volunteers to come with me. Michael, Jacob, and Eric said they would come. We packed up for a potential 2-day trip and left to go find our old campsite. Peter, Braden, and William stayed behind to guard the cabin. I had my FAL, Jacob with his AR, Eric had my Mossberg shotgun. Michael had our dad's old Winchester Model 70. It was a beautiful gun, 30-06 chamber bolt-action rifle, shot like a dream. Anyways, we make the hour hike uneventfully and reach the campsite. The whole place is completely torn apart. The ground looks like a herd of buffalo trampled it. Every single surrounding tree within a 30-foot radius has gashes at the base. Our fire pit was dug up and ashes were spread everywhere. We showed him the scene and began to follow the blood trail to see where it led us. I didn't think to check for the footprints before, so we tried to find some this time. After searching a bit, Eric found what looked like a stretched out human foot with what looked like 4 claws for toes. My brother was a tough guy, never showed any emotion other than anger or usually alcohol-induced happiness. When we called him over to see the print, his face went pale, paler than the rest of us. He told me that we should just leave and not deal with this. I told him that I was determined to find out what took our doe. We weren't leaving until we at least found the carcass. We began following the blood and footprints for about half an hour. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was scared shitless the entire time. Jacob seemed to be the least fazed of all of us. The guy came from an abusive household, spent every weekend since sophomore absolutely shit-faced. The guy played in a black metal band for the past 2 years. He was by far the craziest of us all. I'll do some stupid shit, but Jacob would do it twice. He's not an idiot though. He knows his limits, and he knows when a situation isn't worth getting into. I asked him if we should keep following after we lost the blood trail. He just looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I want my deer." We followed the footprints for another 15 minutes until we came upon a small ravine, probably a 12-foot drop, about 20 feet wide. It was easy to get in and out of. There was a stream running through it. On the ledge of the other side, we see what was left of Jacob's doe. The body looked like that somebody had carefully cut every last bit of flesh off the bones and then power washed it. The head, however, untouched apart from one detail. The eyes were gone. Jacob and Michael wanted to get a closer look, so we went into the ravine, looking for a way to get to the other side. We managed to find a way up and worked our way through the brush to the doe. The eyes looked like they had been scraped out with claws. The rest of the head seemed intact though. I have actually seen this before on other animal carcasses that were pecked at by birds or raccoons, so this wasn't too freaky to me, but it was very concerning. Jacob cracked off a rib bone and said that he wanted it as a souvenir. We got back into the ravine to work our way to the other side, and then we finally saw it. I'll describe this situation the best I can from what we all managed to see about this thing. It was at the end of the ravine, 50 yards away, just watching us, standing on 2 legs, 2 skinny arms as well. It looked as if it were hunched over. The head looked like a mixture between a deer and a wolf, but the eyes looked oddly human. There was no hair, nothing. It was shriveled looking, light brown, with a gray looking stomach. It was probably somewhere between 6 to 7.5 feet tall. You could see its rib cage through its skin. We couldn't see anything much else about it. It just stared at us. We were shitting ourselves. Even Jacob looked like he had regretted the whole trip coming here. And then it slowly starts walking toward us, almost like a gorilla, using its arms to support itself. I tell Eric to grab the road flare from my bag. I keep it in my belt and raise my rifle. We're standing there, all in a line, in this ravine, guns aimed at this thing as it walks toward us. The sun was just beginning to set too, which only made things worse. Jacob shouted at the thing to F off. It stops, looks around, and then back at us. It's moving slightly faster now. I swear to God, I almost messed my pants at this point. When it reaches about 20 yards away, we open fire. It lets out the same blood-curdling shriek that we heard that second night, moving its arms in front of its face like it's trying to block the bullets. And then looks back and starts moving. It makes its way up the rocks that we came on and out of the ravine and out of our sight. Eric's shotgun jammed, so I handed him my road flare, and Michael handed him his CZ that he had holstered. It was easier to give him another gun than to try to make him unjam his. We wait for a few minutes, looking for where it went. Then we heard the shriek behind us. We turned around to see this thing darting at us. We opened up again. It stopped 20 yards away. It was getting darker too, harder to see. It starts walking away again, not even limping. We immediately make our way out of the ravine. We brought headlamps with us. We turned them on and quickly made a fire in a small clearing by the ravine. I used my S-Butt stove fuel to start it quickly. We gathered wood real quick to keep it going all night. We set up our diamond perimeter again and waited. There weren't any clouds tonight. It was easier to see, but still dark. After a couple hours, that wet dog smell came back again. We heard grunts. This time, we could see a silhouette moving through the brush. It was only 10 feet away from us now. It was circling us again. Then it stopped, right in front of Michael. Michael turned on his headlamp, and we saw it. It turned around immediately as we shot at it, and we heard another shriek as it ran off. We sat in that formation all night once again until the sun was up the next morning. While M was in Afghanistan, I used to mail him these little caffeine pills. He told me that his platoon used them while on watch at the FOB to help stay awake and alert. In return, he used to send me stuff that they just got, like people would give them or little trinkets they'd find. One thing was an old Soviet bayonet, a .50 caliber shell, and a prayer rug. He brought some of those pills along. He uses them for work now too, on those long shifts. We all took 2 each, one covers 4 hours, and began our march back to the cabin. As we left, we saw a fresh blood trail. This time, we didn't follow it. Not again. We managed to find our way back to the cabin after a couple hours of trying to figure out where we actually were. We walked in, and we were immediately greeted by the rest of the guys with hugs and tears. "We thought you guys were effing dead. What happened?" We told them about the encounter and asked them what happened while we were gone and why they were acting the way they were. They said that 3 of them showed up at the cabin and were on the roof. Eric and I went outside and checked the roof. There were claw marks all over it. Michael said that we need to leave before everything gets much worse. We all pack up and leave back for Toledo. We stopped at a motel in Columbus on the way back to get some sleep, so we didn't fall asleep at the wheel. I remember asking Michael why he went pale at that footprint. He then told me that when we were younger and we used to come camping here with our parents, that he saw that print before. He said that when we were kids and came to this area, he saw one of those prints near the cabin. As a young teenager, you think that footprints are cool and you wonder what made them. Around this time, I was mostly stuck with my parents. He said that he went exploring around the cabin, trying to follow the footprints, but all he found was that they went into a big circle. Thinking this was spooky, he just moved on with the afternoon and eventually forgot about it. We cooked over the fire and did family stuff and settled in for the night. Sometime in the night, he had to pee, but he also heard something out around the fire pit just as he was about to leave the cabin. When he gathered up the courage to go head out, he saw nothing there. He was telling himself it was just his imagination. He went around the side of the cabin near some trees to pee. In the beam of the flashlight, he saw weird marks on some of the trees, and then something else. He heard something very lightly trudging through the woods near where he was standing, and then he heard a snort or heavy breathing. As he's telling me this, he went pale again. He said he swung his flashlight to where he heard it, and he saw something almost exactly like we saw at the ravine. It was staring right at him. He froze still. He said its eyes looked intelligent, almost human. And then, with another snort, it sank back into the trees. He ran inside the cabin, locked the door, and huddled awake until dawn. Obviously, as you can imagine, I haven't gone camping there since. The trek back was, again, not great, but we all made it. every now and then we all try to get together and kind of recount what happened. And whenever we do this, we make sure that if we're going to be camping, it's at an actual campsite. Me and that girl didn't last, teen love and all that. But really, I'm just glad that we all made it out of there, alive. So that was pretty crazy, wasn't it? If you liked the story, then be sure to like and subscribe. And of course, as usual, if you have your own story or would like to donate to the channel, there are links in the description below that you can do all that stuff. There's a PayPal and a Patreon, super thanks here on YouTube, and an email that you can send them to if you'd like to as well. And of course, just liking and subscribing and just watching the video is a great help too. And with that, I'll thank you for pulling up a stump with me, and I'll thank you for watching. Have a good week, and make sure to follow the 3 H's. And if you're wondering what they are, like if you're new, they are happy, healthy, and hydrated. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Have a good week.